All right, here we are, looking at another book by Anthony Browne. This is the second book in my Anthony Browne series. I'm going to look at a few more before moving on to other stories. So the book is, of course, Into the Forest. It's a very, very famous book. Let's go to the title. Let's start straight away. So we have here a very familiar image. We have a boy or a young child venturing off into the forest. This boy obviously hasn't been told the story of Red Riding Hood, famous classic story, showing the dangers of such a risk. In any case, this title page will allow students to really come up with make a whole bunch of links to other stories, to other sources about this certain scenario. It's a very good prediction as well, what will happen to this boy as he goes into the forest. We have the basket, again, very popular image. The red riding shoes or red shoes, that will spark some interest. This interesting cross in the middle, probably nothing too meaningful in that, but I can definitely carry on if I wanted to. We have a castle or a crown or a little tiny village, however you want to see it. Maybe Rumpelstiltskin, that can sort of spark ideas here. Plus also this sort of strange box over here, or this sort of item. I'm not too sure what it is, but nonetheless, it's very interesting. Anthony Browne here is doing his magic, this shadow. Uh, I would say it looks very much like a rabbit. I mean, it could definitely be just the boy, but it has that rabbit again linking to other stories here. I'm thinking the tortoise and the hare that comes out, but he loves to merge the dreamlike with the real, sort of hyperreal. You get this lovely texture in his books, beautiful textured, lots of detail in his leaves. You don't get that in many other books. Then you come to this sort of simplified, sort of low resolution images. So this little frog here in the background having a look. That could be a bit of an eye here, but again, this little frog um, which pokes its head out. I notice things at every single read of these books. Just something new pops up, something new pops up, and I'm sure I'm missing some stuff here. We have the title page here, Come Home Dad, so we know it's going to be a story about missing his dad, and there's a message there for him. All right, hopefully I've understood how to use this program more, so my page flips won't be as frequent as the first video. Let's get into it. One night I was woken up by a terrible sound. Beautiful, very simple page. It's not complicated by pictures, doesn't have those chunky paragraphs that terrify children. It's a very nice, innocent, non-threatening start to a book. We have here a boy, lots of children, again, will remember this scene, lightning in the background, thunder, this dark forest, which we can see he will eventually venture into. And then, this reflection, things are amplified. And we have this mysterious toy, a soldier toy without a leg. So there's a story behind that. There must be a story behind this. And Anthony Browne has chosen this to be the only other object in this page. I wonder why. It's interesting to note that this is following the hero's journey archetype. This story, most stories are, if not all, but this is following a hero's archetype journey where the boy is called to adventure, or at the start of the story, there's a hint of the adventure to follow. The boy at this stage doesn't necessarily know he will be called to adventure. So here, Anthony Browne, like every story, is going to position the problem. The next morning, all was quiet. Dad wasn't there. I asked Mum when he was coming back, but she didn't seem to know. So we have that emptiness. That sort of shadow is similar to the page before, where the boy is sitting down and that shadow is pushed. That sort of dark, forgotten, or in peril sort of atmosphere is made here. The mum's in the middle. She's looking, sorry, I have to go that, click, and then zoom in. I'm getting it. The mum is looking, sort of worried. It sort of sets a tone. The boy as well is frightened. Um, we have a classic scene, breakfast over here. Nothing particularly striking in this image in terms of the fantasy or strange imagery. I like how Anthony Browne has left this as a single sentence. Dad wasn't there. For the next one, he puts in the clause but. So he's conjunction but. So he's combined these two clauses. This is important because this tells us that this sentence has a lot of meaning. Dad wasn't there. It deserves its own space. I missed Dad. The next day, Mum asked me to take care of Grandma, who was poorly. I love Grandma. She always tells me such fantastic stories. There are two ways to get to Grandma's house. The long way round, which takes ages, or the short way through the forest. Don't go into the forest, said Mum. Go the long way round. Well, of course, as soon as we hear... wait, let me think. Click, zoom in. Yeah. Of course, as soon as we hear this line here, don't do that. Don't go there. This will arouse anyone's interest. I wonder, that means I sort of want to. The moment you say don't to a child, you definitely raise an interest in the opposite, in the very thing that you want to prevent them. So that's just a nice little phrase there. So we have these pictures, we have these memories. Again, this shadow exists. It's in the next picture. It hasn't gone away. It's a very isolating feel. We have a picture of the family in the background. There's a crack, mum and me, and then all of a sudden a crack. The dad is on the other side. So there's hints of his ideology spilling out into the material world. He's writing all these notes, which we soon find out says, I miss Dad, or come home, Dad. And he's doing it repetitiously. He sticks them all over the house. There's under the lights, on the TV, at the door. Be good here to ask the students, well, why did he choose these locations? Why did he choose these locations? There's a bit of a story here that Dad would open the door, or this could be the bedroom door, but he could open the front door, switch the lights on, watch TV. These are sort of typical places the father would be found. Then we have, again, those stickers being stuck on, putting the dustbins out, opening the back door. These are places which he associates with his father. Nice little colon here, which you can talk to the students about, probably year 4, year 5, but a bit too young for year 3s. An embedded clause, which relative clause, I should say, which again is a nice teaching point for year 4s onwards. The short way through the forest. Don't go into the forest, said Mum. Go the long way round. Yeah, right. It wouldn't be a story if you listened. All right. But that day, for the first time, I chose the quick way. I wanted to be home in case Dad came back. So nice little, a nice arrangement of commas here. You could just talk to the students about these commas and why has the author decided to put them in this fashion. And interesting, for the first time ever, I chose the quick way. So we're sort of living through this boy vicariously. He chooses the wrong thing for the first time. This will appeal to many students who are getting to an age where they would be choosing to not listen, or they would be making decisions not to tell the truth as such. So there's a bit of an insight into what can happen if you take that road. So for the first time, you could talk about what kind of character this boy is, who has always listened to his parents. But why is it this time? Why is it this time? Is this the first time the dad has not come back? The boy goes into the forest. This is a similar picture to the front, walking in, very sort of aggressive, very busy type of forest. There's threats everywhere. Whether the reality of this is the case is another story. We know Anthony Browne likes to, amplify the inner feelings on the outside world So whether this is true, this is another story, but who cares? In any case, the forest is a massive threat. Everything looks threatening. You don't see that into the boys. The boy doesn't have much of an expression there. It's not shown, but definitely you can see that he recognizes there's a threat to this decision. After a short while, I saw a boy. "Do you want to buy a nice milky moo cow?" he asked. "No," I said. "Why would I want a cow?" "I'll swap it for the sweet, fruity cake in your basket," he said. "No, it's for my poorly grandmother," I said, and walked on. "I'm poorly," I heard him saying. "I'm poorly." All right, nice little teaching point here about inverted commas or speech marks, how there's a new speaker, new line. Someone new is speaking, therefore it's a new line. New speaker, new line, new speaker, new line. Very important for year threes to start getting into that. The picture's quite standard. There's nothing that stands out. Got a few sort of like faces coming out on top of these trees. Some sort of kind of like faces. They're sort of very close to, they're very suggestive. I think that keeps our arousal. We have this strange troll though, this troll head on top of this very spiky tree. And of course we have this strange boy. Where does this boy come from? What's his story? And this sort of cow that couldn't really care less. Interesting how the picture is in black and white, except for the boy. It kind of can represent the bleakness, all that sort of depressed mood where the outside world is just black and white and nothing is filled with color or vibrancy until he finds his father. We have a whole page now again, which is important because we've dedicated a whole page thing to this. So it's worth taking a look at. The boy is shouting, "I'm poorly, I'm poorly." We have the disinterested cow. If we zoom in, we got this sort of vine growing. It looks like eyes and mouths, sort of talking vegetation that's happening in the background. If we keep following along, you can see some other sort of suggestive stuff. Got this sort of like nose or something down here, and then we have this sort of club, um, like a troll club or something like that. As I went further into the forest, I met a girl with golden hair. "What a sweet little basket," she said. "What's in it?" "A cake for my grandma. She's poorly." I'd like a lovely cake like that," she said. I walked on and could hear her saying, "But it's a lovely little cake. I'd like one like that." Interesting how we have text which mentions golden hair, yet we don't have that. We don't see that. It's all black and white. A task you can do here with color. Also, we can see this word said. I'm sure there was one more. No, on the other page, there was another said. So this is a nice little saying. Here we go. Nice little teaching point around different words, which speech words, said, asked, begged. Here we have the new speaker, new line. Then we have our ellipses. Who has golden hair? This is a nice question for children that we know of in stories. Is this Goldilocks? Is this Rapunzel? Is this Cinderella? And what's she doing here by herself? And why isn't she afraid? Why is she just sort of hanging out? The background looks fairly neutral. And this actually, if I go back a page, we can see that the background looks neutral when the point of focus is within a conversation. Right now, the boy's imagination is not drifting out. It's sort of staying within what's happening in the interaction. But as he leaves, as he goes away, more sort of associative, dreamlike states enter the environment around him. So if we go to the next page of the girl, click forward, again, this is the interaction. He sort of stopped imagining, he stopped wondering about the outside world, and therefore it's quite real. But as soon as he walks away, the environment is filled with what could the sounds be? What could um, the noises be? And the whole picture transforms into a really fantastical landscape. We have a house in the background, or it's like a big ear that could sort of link to the girl. It's like a teddy bear's house. So maybe this is Goldilocks. We have suggestive, um, figurative objects on trees that look like faces or ghosts or something. There's a bit of a wing here. Just don't know. Or it's not. It's always that question with Anthony Browne. Is this or is it that? And it really opens that door up to the sort of the fluid nature of things. We have the three little bears walking in the background. That would then clarify this is Goldilocks. I'm sure that boy with the cow means something, but I haven't caught onto it just yet. Is that a tail? Is that a snake? And there he goes, he's walking off. The forest was becoming darker and colder, and I saw two other children huddling by a fire. "Have you seen our dad and mum?" the boy asked. "No. Have you lost them?" "They're cutting wood in the forest somewhere," said the girl, "but I'd wish they'd come back." As I walked on I could hear the dreadful sound of the girl crying. But what could I do? Question mark. Alright, so there's a reference to another fantasy story. I think it's Hansel and Gretel. I haven't sorted this out. Because I think in Hansel and Gretel, they go out chopping wood and then they get lost or something like that. The parents didn't want them. It'll come to me. But this is the sort of moment in the classroom where you can stop and say, well, what is this referencing? What does this remind you of? And then they can clarify, they can correct you. So if you know this story and the story with the cow and the boy references, please let me know because I'm yet still to find out. Again, we have new speaker, new line. A really good example is to say to the kids, they could have fit no, they could have fit that word over here, but it's a new line. Even when you're writing, don't fill up the last bit of space because you feel you need to when you're doing sentences. Interesting conversation around here with the comma and. Usually we tell kids that the conjunction is just on its, the conjunction doesn't have a comma before it, but it definitely does. That's more your 4, your 5. I would let your 3 children get away with just writing and. We have lots of contractions as well coming up in the last few pages as well. So nice little teaching point there. Good sentence starter as I walked on, starting with action. I could hear the dreadful sound, lovely, of the girl crying. But what could I do? Nice little P4C session. What do we do with poverty? What do we do with homeless people in the playgrounds? Homeless people on the streets. Can we help people? Can we help everyone who doesn't feel good or needs help? We have the 2 children here, sort of very hyper real. They look quite ordinary, these ones actually, quite similar to the boy. Birds over here. We have a locked, it looks like a figure of a person. I don't know why, but I want to say mother. But someone who seems locked in the vegetation itself. These could be teeth of a big dragon I've heard once. We have the white bird. Again, there's a few there. We have this natural tree to a very hyper-real tree. Again, all these suggestive faces coming out, morphing out of the tree. This sort of like figure here. It's got its legs down here. It's quite odd, quite scary. All this sort of stuff here. It's very nice. There's the basket. Some mushrooms, some fire. And then we have this house over here. And an axe in the tree. Bingo. Lots of children would just look at this and all of a sudden shout, wow, like this is definitely Red Riding Hood. This brings a massive link, to Red Riding Hood. I was getting very cold and I wished that I had brought a coat. Suddenly I saw one. Lovely. Just again, I can't stress enough how much I love these simple sentences. But they have to be purposeful. You can't have children write a short sentence and then say, oh, it's for impact, it's got a lot of meaning. They have to be able to justify it. It's very effective, but also very easy to pretend. Suddenly I saw one. It was nice and warm, but as soon as I put it on, I began to feel scared. I felt that something was following me. I remembered a story that Grandma used to tell me about a bad wolf. I started to run, but I couldn't find the path. I ran and ran deeper into the forest, but I was lost. Where was Grandma's house? It's a nice little problem here. This sort of gets to it's building up to, this is the build up, it's getting to um, the climax. Could talk to his children about here about italics, but as soon as I always get children to read this and then say, can you read it again? But you're emphasizing that italics. It could be either, but as soon as I put it on, or but as soon as I put it on, or but as soon as I put it on. So it's a way you use your voice that really brings this out, the meaning of this out. Really interesting how when he put the coat on, he felt someone following him. He's entered into this big bad wolf Red Riding Hood story. As soon as he takes the role of this red coat, he's felt its sort of historical story which it brings. There's the bad wolf in the background, looking, gazing. It's like the wolf is attracted to the coat, not necessarily the person in it. The coat is what brings the wolf's attention to him. Nothing else is happening that's sort of dreamlike in this picture. The focus, the attention, the imagination is all pointed towards this coat. Nothing he doesn't have the energy to think about anything else in the picture. Here we go. Another beautiful picture, one of my favorite pictures by Anthony Browne. Let me just zoom out a tiny bit. Move my camera. So much input is happening here. He's put the coat on, he's entered into this really frightening landscape, and then all of a sudden the world around him transforms into every single thing possible. All the stories he's heard, which his grandmother says, she always tells me these fantastic stories at the start of the book. All these stories come to life. I wonder if it could be this. I wonder if it could be that. And his imagination is in unison with the world around him. So I mean, I'm gonna miss 100 things, I guarantee you. But there's just so much going on. Blackbirds, sort of broken trees. We've got these like white dots everywhere. I didn't realize that snowing. Sort of organic animal-like objects. This sort of thing here. We have Rapunzel's tower, or what I think is Rapunzel's tower, with the hair, how she escaped. We have the thimble, I think it's called, with not Rumpelstiltskin. Who pricks their thumb? I think it is Rumpelstiltskin, or that's a common item. I think it's in 2 stories, I know. We have a knight who's probably heading towards Rapunzel's castle. We have Cinderella's pumpkin, the shoe. There's a key over here. This log here turns into a bad wolf. So the bad wolf is, as it is in anyone's imagination, the bad wolf is of course behind that corner. The bad wolf is of course under the bed. It's of course behind the log. So your imagination just allows the impossible to happen. There's this cat as well. I can't remember where the cat comes from. Sort of a little world inside there. So yeah, really beautiful image. Lots of links happening here. Lots of links. And he's running off the page. Another common feature that Anthony Browne does, they run out of the page, out of the picture. Here we go, this is the climax, we're getting to it. At last, there it was, exclamation mark. So again, all the attention is focused onto this house. There's nothing else really going on in this picture. Just normal trees, well, sort of strange trees, but nothing. The focus isn't there. His attention is on this house. It does have big ears, which is quite interesting. That I think is more of the big bad wolf. That's another way of personifying the bad wolf within the picture. Classic image. You could easily put this in the Red Riding Hood and just say it's a part of that. I knocked on the door and a voice came out. Who's there? But it didn't really sound like Grandmother's voice. It's me. I've brought a cake from Mum. I pushed the door open a little. Come in, dear, the strange voice called. I was terrified. I slowly crept in. There, in Grandma's bed, was lovely little prediction lesson here. You can talk about what could it be? Is it the grandmother? Is it going to be the wolf? Nice little point here saying, well, it's the first speaker, so this doesn't need to be a new line. Could have easily put that in a new line, but no, it doesn't need to be because it's not a new speaker. So we can continue that. Yep. Nice little two-sentence here. I was terrified, but I slowly crept in. I was terrified, so I slowly crept in. Could have easily put a conjunction here, but again, I was terrified. That has to have its own right. That has to have its own message. Let that sink in before you go to the next short sentence. I slowly crept in. This is building suspense. Short sentences, even single word sentences, if you can call it that, build suspense. I turned the doorknob. Silence. Creak. Creak. I turned around. Darkness. That kind of thing sets a pace and builds that suspense. It's a very good strategy for suspense. And here we go. Here's the big surprise. So we've come to the climax. We've had the call to adventure. We've had the beginning. We've had the problem building up. Climax is here. And it's Grandma, yay! So it actually turns out to be all okay. Big smile, very warm picture. Come here, love, she sniffed. How are you? I'm all right now, I said. Then I heard a noise behind me and turned around. So again, we build that suspense. Maybe this is a happy ending after all. Or maybe, and we have this beautiful thing. Again, the silhouette of the bed is burst out, but this time it feels like the sun. It feels like joy. It feels life-giving rather than that isolating feel it had in the first few pictures. Sniffed. That's nice. I would ask my children to write that in their vocab books. Then, I heard a noise behind me. Turned around. Who's it going to be? What's it going to be? Let me just move my camera. Dad! Big capital letters. This is the person really that the boy has been looking for. And here he is in his glory, ready for a big hug. We have again that silhouette coming out behind him. I told them everything that had happened. We all had a hot drink and I ate 2 pieces of Mum's delicious cake. Then we said goodbye to Grandma, who was feeling much better. When we got home, I pushed open the door. Who's there? A voice called. It's only us, we said. So, yeah, nice little conclusion here. Nothing much else to say. And Mum came out smiling. So there we go. We go back to the conclusion. Usually in the hero's journey, the call to adventure, the build-up, climax, resolution, and now it's the conclusion. In the hero's journey, you return home with new wisdom, with new information. So this story definitely, definitely ticks all the boxes for that archetypal way of storytelling. And Mum came out, smiling. Beautiful. So really good. The reunions there. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Very good book. Very basic, but filled with so much. Absolutely so much. You can do lessons and lessons and lessons on this book. Definitely recommend it. Get your kids talking about it, reading it. It's for many different levels. Yeah, definitely. I just can't recommend it enough. All right, enjoy.